So there's lots of ways to look at this. There's no one way. There's lots of rocky roads along the way. Sometimes there's places that have difficulty with this whole regional stuff. Can't imagine that, can you? But there are. There's places where sometimes the policymakers get in the way. Sometimes policymakers get in the way. I know this is hard to believe, but sometimes policy economy, they don't necessarily get the connection. Sometimes lawmakers get the idea, I think, that they pass, they can control policy. They think about policy. They get to act on it and study it and come out with pronouncements on policy, and the economy is just something that happens to them. My favorite story about that is when Murphy's dog died, and he went to see the parish priest. And Father Kelly said, "What can I do for you, Murphy?" And Murph says, "Well, I'd like to get this dog died, and I'd like to get a good Catholic burial." And the priest says, "Murphy, we don't do pets here. We can't give a pet Christian burial. What are you talking about? We can't do that." And Kelly goes, "It's too bad his dog was a part of the family for all those years. Isn't there something you could recommend?" And the priest said, "Well, you might try the Unitarians down the street. They're a little more liberal about this kind of thing." Murphy said, "That's a great idea, Father. That's a great idea. How much do you think something like this might cost? You think $100 might be enough?" And the priest said, "Why didn't you tell me the dog was Catholic?" A priest told me that, so it's okay. I only go to purgatory as a result. But that policy and the economy is very much connected, and we all know it is, but sometimes in some regions they don't get it. Sometimes there's a problem with the entities, and Jacob talked about the conflict sometimes between all those people who are in business civic entities and chambers, and how they do butt heads sometimes. Sometimes there's just too many with too many agendas and too many attempts. Northeast Ohio is just trying to fix this issue now, where they've had this Team NEO trying to tie in the cities, the large and small cities in northeastern Ohio, and how hard that is with tech councils and Akron Chamber and the Football Hall of Fame impact and all these things that go on up there, and how hard it is to pull everybody together. You got Dallas-Fort Worth. If you're the head of the Dallas Chamber, we kind of used to call it the Jan Black syndrome. She was the head of the chamber in Dallas. How do you say that's one place? DFW is this ethereal region that is so hard to define, and the people in Irving and Arlington will fight back against whether or not they get controlled by anything, certainly in Dallas. And Fort Worth, Dallas days, Fort Worth nights. Everybody wants to go have a good time at Fort Worth. Phoenix, very good until recently on reacting to things, not so good on planning and setting a direction for themselves. Now they're starting to get that. Birmingham, the perils of personality, I call it. They had a great regional agenda going on in Birmingham. Everything going great because they had a chamber president, a university president, and a city manager, all in alignment, 3 young guys, all kicking butt, working toward the same objective. 2 of them took other jobs and left. And the system, their whole regional initiative took a step back that is just now getting back on track. Philadelphia, how do you deal with an issue where your region is 4 states? And try talking the governor of Wilmington, or of Delaware, into coming over for your regional conference in Philadelphia. They're not amused. But there are lots that are working, and they're doing good things in lots of ways. We have you made a start that others are envious of. I'll be honest with you, they're envious. They want to know, how do they get this governance thing started? How do they get a dream that can be drawn? How do they get the city leaders? This leadership thing. How do you get somebody who will stand up and take the heat at a public hearing? How do you get somebody who will reach across an aisle at a nonprofit and say, "I understand why you have to get the grant this time, and it's not going to necessarily be our time to get the grant, but congratulations, and I'm happy for you." Those handshakes, those meetings, those stand-up things take a kind of leadership that you've been developing here that just is good practice. It leads to that incremental regionalism going faster, and that's what I think is so important. So I'll give you 3 little tips, because everybody always likes to leave with the advice from the guy from out of town. So I'll give you 3 things. One is you have to figure out the reinvigoration, the rejuvenation process before you need it. You're 2 years into this, you know, or you can draw it a little farther back, but you've got to figure out already what it is that's going to keep the spark alive so that people will jump up with the microphone to get the chance to talk about what's going right. You have to think about the sustainability of your sustainability effort, because the bold, strong headlines of today can become kind of cliched in the future. But the work has still got to be done. And this consistency over time still has to happen, and you've got to think about the rejuvenation before you need it. Second thing, this risk-taking stuff is hard. And sometimes you have to ask and push and ask and drive. I would just recommend that you recognize how hard it is to stand up and do some of these things, and give each other some love. Give these people a recognition of how hard it is. They get pressure from every side, 5 sides, and you're asking them to pick yours. Okay? When they do, and even when they don't, recognize the difficulty rather than attack them for what is sometimes perceived as a weakness. And the last thing is that driving regional change is not for the many. It's for the few. And I know that the beneficiaries are the many, but really the work is done by the few. Some people call it the influentials. American demographics call it the influentials. That 10% of the people in town who would actually read the paper and notice if there was a public hearing and have a thing going on with their church group or whatever, that this influential group is actually pretty small. And sometimes that can get daunting, I think, when you realize that the work is going to continue to fall on the few and you're not going to get everybody to the table. You're not going to win hearts and minds and eyeballs right away. It's going to take time, sometimes a generation, to get people thinking in the right way. But you can take action immediately. You can take small steps and small actions immediately. And as the ultimate anthropologist said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So with that, I'll close and congratulate you on how far you've come, and wish you well in the journey, because the journey's half as fun as the destination. So thank you very much.